So welcome to the second video. There is some information about Perseus and then onwards to the enemy signaling and decoding. So if you read the article, you can read what we discussed prior, but also additional information on the Greek mythology behind Perseus. What I find interesting to share with you here in the video is how Perseus is both depicting as combating a human and a human spirit, and we see that reflected in him holding a female head, but in many depictions it's also visualized or created as a demon head, and especially the snakes replacing the hair coming out of the head is a very typical reflection of the Medusa. So one way the Lord is highlighting the importance of giving attention to this section of the heavens is by shining comets. We saw in our former article how comet Pan-STARRS is circling the Heart and Soul nebula of the Queen Cassiopeia, but there are also comets signaling this section of Perseus and Andromeda. Because in Pegasus, that is the winged horse of Perseus, used to transport Andromeda to the throne room, we see currently Comet Atlas. And Atlas was the Greek god who is depicted as holding the world on his shoulders. You may be familiar with that picture. So Andromeda herself is also highlighted by a comet, C 2018 N2 Assassin, and I included it into the article because of the name Assassin speaking for itself, as I think. The Diamond Princess's life is being threatened from within and without, not just by witchcraft and but also by sin, causing a hardening of her heart, and that could progress into her remaining shackled to the world. We know Andromeda is also a reflection of the lukewarm church, which is being not just threatened with her life, but also threatened to be left behind when Perseus comes as the breaker in the rapture. So as the breaker is awaited to come in the clouds shortly, the lawbreaker and lawless one is making his soon arrival and revealing himself to us as well. He is, of course, impersonating the original, and he is maximizing his power as Prince of the Air, currently spreading fear, lies, sickness, and death. So the coming lawbreaker is coming amidst clouds also. In this case, killing clouds, killing fogs, killer fogs, as we have seen, especially with regard to the coronavirus. And that is reflective of his nature as well. So if we study the history behind Perseus, we can actually see and recognize and even foreshadow what is to come. So Perseus serves as a prophetic type for airborne destruction, as he in mythology was the founder of Mycenae, or Mushroom City, its name meaning waste, sack, destroy, and ravage. In a distorted mythological reading, Perseus flies from city to city on winged sandals, making Persea, a magical herb from his sword. Myces, or mushrooms, which are the fruits of deception or magic mushrooms, it's also sometimes called the manna of the people following Satan. It grows at these sites as food for the occult, desiring to open spiritual boundaries and storming the heavens another way, the Lord warned us against. The word serpents is also an anagram for presence, which will come into play later as well. So recalling the mushroom clouded Christmas presents, Kim, North Korea, referred to in his nuke threat messaging, predictively programmed over here below on the Economist cover 2015, we see the satanic elite pointing to killer drones delivered airborne nano packages, delivering plagues and pestilence. We can even visually discern a confirmation of viruses being amped up by 5G And we know now that the viral nanoparticles are subject to electromagnetic waves. We see a panicked plague from China designed to go viral. And there is a lot of predictive programming which has already been covered, but I haven't seen this one yet. So in the Economist edition of The World in 2015, we saw a special China edition. At the time, I was like puzzled, like, why are they doing that? But now it becomes a little bit more clear. So in this depiction of the Economist 2015, we see an amazing overload of symbolism, and I'm going to zoom in on the aspects of China and the viral plagues right now. So in the top right, we see a killer drone. Obama referred to that in his correspondence dinner speech. Dropping presents below Janice's head, that is the reflection of the new year, and a rocket embellished mushroom cloud. And if you look really closely, you also see the exact same colors which are used in the background of that scenes in the iPad goat, in which we see both a peace activist and a war, someone symbolizing war or combat, in that same location and in the exact same color scheme. So below, in the below left, we see a Super Bowl kickoff scene. That would be over here. So we see both a Chinese boy eating. There's a magazine broadcasting panic. We're going to be zooming into it a little bit later, but it says here, over here, the Federal Reserve, over here, China. And we see dots as in viruses, but also the Chinese gaining in strength. We know now that that reflects the lockdowns, the ushering in of medical martial law, and Chinese behaving as a totalitarian dictator. But there's more in this section, because we see the diamond signaling by Merkel, and she is depicting here the Diamond Princess scene. That is confirmed by this specter or ghoul. This is a reflection of that specter or ghost, and he is holding a magazine which is pointing to a holiday. So in addition, we see a plus-minus battery reflecting the 5G amplification of that virus, and a kickoff, and the portion of China. So over here you see that a little bit enlarged, and we are familiar with that mushroom cloud signaling in the iPad goat as well. For instance, in this scene, which is reflective of the opening of Pandora's box or jar. And Pandora has parallels with both Eve and Venus. So in a former article, I already shared some information about how the Super Bowl kickoff was reflective of a cup, a red cup, before its redesign. After its redesign, it looked as a sacrificial altar. This is what a brazen altar, a biblical sacrificial altar, looks like with fire underneath. We see that reflected over here. So Shakira, in that witchcraft ritual, played the role of Kali, the demon or goddess of destruction, and she was dressed in golden, so she also reflected the Golden Gate. And if you look at what role she depicts, she often represents this demon goddess of destruction. So we see the parallels between what is depicted in the iPad code and what Shakira did on stage. And she was like dancing around this cauldron in a cup-like structure. and it was a sacrificial or witchcraft ritual of preparing the altar and gaining consent by the people watching this. And we know from the Bible that before large rituals or false flags, the elite are preparing the sacrificial altar, and maybe it's also to gain consent because of the very many people watching this and not opposing it in prayer or otherwise. They gain permission to go ahead with the ritual. So this is the first portion of that demon star. Remember that binary demon star Al Ghul? And then a second Antichrist goddess, a transgender one as well, rises from the masses subsequently, like the binary Al Ghul demon star swapping places with the first. We see Medusa, or a celestial Silvergate reflection, personified by Jennifer Lopez, frontwoman for fashion label Versace, performing as rising Antichrist in a Baphomet attire, together with her daughter, also enlisted in the craft. The latter is embodying youth mind control and occult initiation, appeasing many spectators that all is well, there is a child on stage, everything is like normalized, while we're actually, if you are watching this, not prayerfully, but just as entertainment, you're subjected or even agreeing with or condoning a spiritual witchcraft ritual and sexual debauchery. So Medusa's head is in the logo of the Milan-based fashion company Versace, and Jennifer Lopez is often fronting for that label. Versace uses not the snake head, but a portrait of a beautiful woman in the pre-cursed period, so with normal hair rather than snakes. She represents a sexual threat to men intent to save her soul, and is one of the identifications of the spirit of Jezebel. We know from the scriptures is a very fierce and strong demon. And the Lord specifically warns the church of Thyatira in his letter to the 7 churches that they are condoning the Jezebel spirit within their churches. And if they do not repent and turn, they run the risk of remaining left behind at the rapture. So this spirit of Jezebel, the spirit of witchcraft, overpowering, and also sexual seduction, is threatening the church of Thyatira. So here we see how Jennifer Lopez, who is transgendered, which makes her like a suitable host for demons to embody her, is often represented as a goddess. Here we see her in a photograph which reflects the Medusa. This is the clothing or the lack of clothing she was wearing on stage, which was the Baphomet attire. Here we see how her daughter was put into a position of mind control. We see the original from Eastern mystery religion over here. And the Versace logo, the brand she is fronting for often. So from this understanding what the Al Ghul or demon star in the enemy trodden underfoot represents, we can know now that the elite were reenacting this double or binary star by means of Shakira and Jennifer Lopez, and representing the head of the Medusa. Jennifer Lopez, at the end of her performance, even assumed a position of Christ or a serpent on a pole, also reflected in the iPad goat as the Antichrist rising from the ones spectating him, the spectators, and that is reflected in this scene as well. So in the next video, I'm going to start with the parallels between Medusa and Lot's wife and how a hardening of sin can turn our heart into stone. And that is a warning the Lord gives us in the book of Revelation. So see you there.